The Grand Hall of the Galactic Council fell silent as the holographic display flickered to life, showing the swirling, purple-tinged clouds of the Void Nebula. 53 species from across the known universe watched as the Council Elder, a tall blue-skinned being, pointed to the massive gas cloud. For the 7th time in our recorded history, we must conclude that establishing communications through the Void Nebula is impossible, the Elder announced, voice echoing through the chamber. The unique radiation patterns disrupt all known transmission methods. We must accept the nebula as a natural barrier to our expansion. In the back of the hall, Commander Tom Fisher of Earth shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Humans were still newcomers to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 30 years ago. The other species often treated them with a mixture of curiosity and dismissal, like clever children who had wandered into an adult conversation. With respect, Tom called out, standing up despite the disapproving glances from the delegates around him. Earth would like to propose a different approach to the problem. A ripple of whispers spread through the hall. The Elder's 4 eyes blinked slowly in surprise. The human delegation is recognized, the Elder said, making no effort to hide the doubt in his voice. Though I must remind you that species with far more advanced technology have tried and failed for centuries. Tom walked to the center of the hall, his plain gray uniform standing out among the elaborate robes and biosuits of the other delegates. At 48, with graying hair at his temples and deep lines around his eyes, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had solved difficult problems his entire life. Humans have a history of achieving what others thought impossible, Tom said. We're not as advanced as many of you, but we see problems differently. Give us one standard cycle to build a working communication array in the Void Nebula. Laughter erupted from several delegations. The representative from the Marin Collective, a hive mind species known for their computational abilities, stood up. My species spent 20 cycles attempting to solve this problem, the Marin said, their voice a harmonious blend of multiple tones. Our calculations show a 99.8% probability of failure for any known communication technology. What could humans possibly bring to this challenge? Tom smiled. Something you don't have: desperation and creativity. We need this route to expand our colonies. We'll stake our reputation on it. The Council Elder raised a hand for silence. This is most unusual. What does Earth request to attempt this project? Access to the nebula, non-interference from other species, and if we succeed, Earth gives priority access rights to the new route for 10 cycles, Tom replied. The council chamber erupted in debate. After several minutes, the Elder called for order. Very well. 1 standard cycle, 3 Earth years. If you fail, Earth will contribute double resources to the next official attempt and publicly acknowledge the impossibility of the task. Begin your preparations. As Tom left the chamber, a tall, thin alien with pale green skin fell into step beside him. It was Ben, an Earth nickname for an unpronounceable name, the only member of the reclusive Velen species who regularly worked with humans. That was either very brave or very stupid, Ben said. I cannot decide which. Tom grinned. Maybe both, but I got someone in mind who might just pull this off. 2 weeks later, Tom stood in a cluttered workshop on the outskirts of New Seattle on Earth. Tools and machine parts covered every surface, and holographic blueprints floated in the air. In the center of the chaos stood Dr. Jack Reed, hunched over a workbench, completely ignoring his visitor. Jack was in his late 30s, with wild brown hair that looked like it hadn't been combed in days. His hands moved with surprising grace as he assembled a small device, muttering to himself. Jack, Tom said loudly. The council approved our proposal. Jack didn't look up. I heard you volunteered humanity for a suicide mission. Congrats. I volunteered you for a suicide mission, Tom corrected. There's a difference. That got Jack's attention. He straightened up, revealing a lean frame and sharp eyes that examined Tom with open suspicion. The Void Nebula Project. Are you crazy? No one can build a comm system that works through that soup of radiation. That's what they all say. Because it's true. The radiation patterns change constantly. It eats signals for breakfast. Tom picked up a small model ship from a nearby shelf. Remember when everyone said humans couldn't build a jump drive small enough for a scout ship? You proved them wrong. That was different, Jack said, but Tom could see the spark of interest in his eyes. I've already started assembling a team, Tom continued. Dr. Lisa Morgan from MIT. She wrote that paper on quantum entanglement that everyone said was impossible until she demonstrated it. Jack's eyebrows rose. Morgan agreed to this. She said, and I quote, "Finally, something worthy of my time." A small smile tugged at Jack's lips. Who else? Mike Davis for materials science. He's been developing those adaptive alloys for deep space radiation. And Dana Wilson for programming. She's the one who cracked the Marin encryption last year. Jack walked over to his main computer and pulled up a file. I've actually been playing with some ideas about the nebula. Just as a thought experiment, you understand. Tom smiled. Jack was hooked, whether he admitted it or not. When do we leave? Jack asked finally. 3 days. We're setting up a research station at the edge of the nebula. The Velen government is lending us one of their outposts. Jack looked surprised. The Velens? They never share technology. Ben pulled some strings, said he's curious to see what humans can do when properly motivated. 1 month later, the newly named Outpost Hope hummed with activity as the last of the equipment was unloaded from the transport ships. The station hung at the very edge of the Void Nebula, its reinforced windows offering a spectacular view of the swirling purple and black gases that had defied exploration for centuries. Jack stood in the main lab with Lisa Morgan, a tall black woman with close-cropped hair and an intensity that matched his own. They watched as Mike and Dana calibrated the sensors that would map the nebula's radiation patterns. The council sent observers. Lisa said quietly, "They're expecting us to fail." "Of course they are," Jack replied. "That's what makes this fun." Lisa smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I found something interesting in the archives. 100 years ago, a ship from the ancients was discovered at the nebula's edge. The ancients were a mysterious species that had disappeared thousands of years ago, leaving only fragments of their advanced technology across the galaxy. The Galactic Archives had part of their research log," Lisa continued. "They were studying the nebula too, before they vanished." Jack's eyes widened. Did they find a way through? The records are incomplete, but they were approaching the problem differently than everyone else. They weren't trying to overcome the radiation. They were trying to use it. Before Jack could respond, an alarm blared. The station shuddered as a radiation wave from the nebula washed over it. "All systems holding," Donna called out from her station. But that was just a baby wave. "The big ones will be much worse." Jack walked to the window and stared out at the nebula. Everyone said it couldn't be done. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy had tried and failed. "Good," he said softly. "I hate easy problems." Behind him, the team continued their work, unaware that in the depths of the nebula, something ancient was stirring, awakened by their presence after millennia of silence. 3 months into the project, Outpost Hope no longer looked like the pristine research facility it had been. Scorch marks decorated the walls from electrical fires, makeshift repair patches covered equipment, and the crew moved with the slow, careful steps of people operating on too little sleep. Jack stood before the station's main viewport, staring at the twisted remains of their third prototype floating in space. The nebula's swirling purple energy had torn through the communications array as if it were made of paper. "That's the third complete failure," said Ben, the Velen observer. He stood beside Jack, his thin green fingers tapping against his datapad. "The council representatives are concerned about your lack of progress." Jack didn't turn away from the viewport. "Tell them to be concerned about something else. We're working." The Marin delegation is already drafting a report stating that this project is, as predicted, impossible. Good for them, Jack muttered. I hope they use nice paper. Lisa entered the observation deck, her normally neat appearance now disheveled. Dark circles hung under her eyes, but determination still burned in her gaze. Jack, we need to talk about the power flow. I think I see where we went wrong. Ben bowed slightly. I will leave you humans to your work, but remember, time passes quickly. As Ben left, Lisa spread holographic diagrams in the air between them. The radiation spikes are following a pattern we didn't account for. Look here and here. She pointed to 2 points where energy waves had crashed into their prototype. Jack studied the data. So the nebula doesn't just block signals, it actively attacks them. Not attacks. It's more like an immune system. The nebula responds to our transmissions as if they're invaders. Lisa pushed her hair back from her face. We need to rethink our entire approach. The door slid open, and Mike entered with Donna close behind. Mike carried a small device that pulsed with a soft blue light. We've got something, Mike said. His normally cheerful face was serious. I've been experimenting with those ancient material samples we found in the archives. They respond differently to the nebula's radiation. Dana nodded eagerly. We ran a small-scale test. The material doesn't try to block the radiation. It channels it. Jack took the device from Mike's hands, examining it closely. How far did the signal get? Only a few meters, Dana admitted. But it didn't get destroyed. That's progress. A sudden tremor shook the station, causing the lights to flicker. The nebula outside the viewport churned angrily, waves of energy washing over the station's shields. Another radiation storm, Lisa said. The big one we've been tracking. Jack handed the device back to Mike. Let's see what this baby can do in a real storm. Dana, can you set up monitors to track any signal behavior? Dana looked alarmed. You want to test now, during a storm. That's asking for trouble. That's asking for data, Jack corrected. Get it ready. 2 hours later, as the radiation storm reached its peak, the team gathered in the station's protected core. The test device had been secured to the station's exterior, directly facing the nebula. Power at maximum, Donna called out. Transmission beginning in 3, 2, 1. On the screens, they watched as the small device lit up. It pulsed once, twice, then sent a simple binary pattern, the most basic communication signal possible. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the nebula seemed to ripple. A wave of energy, more focused than the random storm patterns, surged toward the device. It's going to fry it, Mike said, resignation in his voice. But instead of destroying the device, the energy wave flowed around it. The monitoring equipment showed the signal continuing, weak but intact, for almost a kilometer into the nebula before fading. It worked, Lisa whispered. Partially, at least. Jack was about to respond when an alarm blared. The main screen shifted to show an approaching ship. It's the Council Oversight Committee, Dana said, checking the identification codes. They weren't scheduled to visit for another month. Jack swore under his breath. Clean this place up. Let's look like we know what we're doing. The meeting room felt too small, with 7 council representatives crowded around the table. The Marin representative, a blue-skinned being with compound eyes, spoke first. We have concerns about the lack of progress. 9 months have passed, nearly 1/3 of your allotted time, with nothing to show. Jack leaned forward. With respect, we've made significant discoveries. We've identified how the nebula responds to conventional signals, and we found materials that can partially withstand the radiation effects. Partial resistance is not a working communication array, said another representative, this one from a species that resembled large, upright lizards. Our analysis suggests you are pursuing a fundamentally flawed approach. Lisa stepped in. We're not trying to fight the nebula anymore. We're learning to work with it. The representatives exchanged skeptical glances. The Marin spoke again. The Council is considering rescinding the project authorization. Your failure would set back exploration in this sector by decades. Tom, who had remained silent until now, stood up. According to our agreement, we have the full cycle to complete our work. We intend to use it. After the representatives left, promising to return in 3 months for another evaluation, the team gathered in the lab. The mood was dark. They're looking for an excuse to shut us down, Mike said. Jack nodded. So we don't give them one. We need to show real progress before they come back. Donna, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly straightened in her chair. Wait a minute. During the test, did anyone else notice that secondary energy pattern from the nebula? She pulled up the test data. Look here. After our signal went in, something came back. Jack leaned closer. A reflection of our signal. No, Dana said, excitement growing in her voice. It's different. More complex. Lisa studied the pattern. It almost looks like a response, Jack finished. The nebula didn't just let our signal pass. It answered back. Alex zoomed in on the energy pattern. When visualized as sound waves, the pattern had a distinct rhythm, unlike the chaotic static they'd been recording from the nebula for months. What if, Jack said slowly, what if the nebula isn't just a natural phenomenon? What if it's alive in some way? Or artificial? The ancients, Lisa whispered. Their records mentioned studying the nebula, not just passing through it. What if they created it? The implications hung in the air. If the nebula was designed, either as a living entity or an artificial construct, then they needed to communicate with it, not just through it. We've been trying to shout over it, Jack said, a new energy in his voice. We need to start listening to it instead. As if in response, the nebula outside pulsed with light, its swirling patterns briefly taking on a more organized structure before dissolving back into chaos. I think, Mike said quietly, it's already listening to us. The main laboratory of Outpost Hope had transformed over the past month. Gone were the conventional communication devices and standard equipment. In their place stood a strange array of technology that looked more like art than science. Crystalline structures that captured and reflected light, curved panels made from the ancient materials, and at the center, a pulsing core that emitted a soft, rhythmic hum. Jack stood back, surveying their creation with a mixture of pride and doubt. 18 months into their project, with half their allotted time gone, they were betting everything on a theory that most scientists would call insane. It looks like a shrine, Tom said, walking around the device. He had returned to check on their progress, bringing new supplies and growing pressure from Earth Command. Lisa calls it the resonator, Jack replied. It doesn't just send signals, it listens and responds. Tom raised an eyebrow. And you believe the nebula is, what exactly? Alive. Not alive like us, Jack said. But not just random gas and radiation either. The patterns are too organized, too responsive. He pointed to screens displaying wave patterns. Every time we send a signal in, something sends a signal back. Something complex. Dana entered the lab, carrying fresh data tablets. The new arrays are ready. We've positioned them at the coordinates you specified. Jack nodded. Let's run the full test. If this works, we'll have our proof of concept to show the council. Dana hesitated. Jack, we should talk about the power requirements. This will drain almost everything we have. If it fails, then we'll be sitting in the dark for a while. Jack finished. Worth the risk. An hour later, the team gathered in the control room. The station hummed as power was diverted to the resonator. Outside, the nebula seemed unusually calm, its swirling patterns moving slowly, almost as if waiting. Beginning sequence, Donna announced. Transmitting initial pulse pattern. On the screens, they watched as the resonator sent out its first signal. Not a standard communication burst, but a complex pattern based on the responses they had recorded from the nebula over the past months. For several tense seconds, nothing happened. Then the nebula rippled, energy patterns shifting and flowing toward the station. It's responding, Lisa said, her voice barely above a whisper. The monitors showed energy waves moving through the nebula, following pathways they had predicted based on their observations. The waves reached their first relay station, a simple device designed to receive the signal and send back a confirmation. Relay 1 is receiving, Mike confirmed. Signal strength at 60%. That's 3 times better than our best previous attempt. The signal continued, reaching the second relay point before beginning to degrade. We're losing it, Dana said, hands moving quickly over the controls. The pattern is breaking down. Jack leaned forward. Adjust the resonance. Let's match its frequency. Lisa made the adjustments, and the resonator's hum deepened. The device glowed brighter, pulsing in a new rhythm. On the screens, the nebula's energy patterns shifted again, seeming to respond to the changes. The signal stabilized, pushing through to the third relay point before fading completely. 3 relay points, Tom said. That's over 50 kilometers into the nebula. No one's ever managed that before. Jack wasn't satisfied, but not all the way through. We're still missing something. As the system powered down, Ben entered the control room. The Velen had been watching their progress with increasing interest over the months. The council representatives have arrived early, he announced. They seem eager to evaluate your progress. Jack exchanged glances with his team. They had expected another month to perfect their system before the next inspection. Tell them we'll be ready to present our findings in 2 hours, Jack said. After Ben left, Dana voiced what everyone was thinking. They're here to shut us down, aren't they? Probably, Jack admitted, but they can't ignore results. Lisa, can you clean up that data? I want to show them exactly what the nebula is doing. Mike, get the resonator ready for a demonstration. The council representatives sat stiffly in the conference room as Jack explained their theory. Most looked skeptical, especially the Marin representative, whose compound eyes reflected no emotion. You're suggesting, the Marin said, that this nebula, a natural phenomenon, is some kind of communication entity. This is unscientific. I'm suggesting, Jack replied carefully, that the nebula has properties consistent with a designed system, not a random one. Our data shows clear response patterns to specific inputs. The representative from the Orion Consortium, a tall being with metallic skin, leaned forward. The consortium has extensive experience with communication technology. What you describe would violate several established laws of physics. Only if you assume all physics is the same everywhere, Lisa countered. The nebula exists in a quantum state unlike anything we've seen elsewhere. Jack nodded to Donna, who activated a holographic display showing their test results. We've achieved partial communication 50 kilometers into the nebula. No other attempt has managed even 5 kilometers. This caused a stir among the representatives. The Marin turned to confer with its colleagues in a rapid series of clicks and whistles. We would like to see a demonstration, the Marin said finally. Jack had expected this. We've prepared one for you, but I should warn you, we're still learning how to interpret the responses. In the main lab, the representatives gathered around the resonator. The strange device drew curious looks, with several representatives scanning it with their personal devices. This design incorporates no standard communication technology, noted the Orion representative, suspicion clear in his voice. Because standard technology fails in the nebula, Jack said simply. As everyone has discovered. Jack nodded to his team. Let's begin. The resonator hummed to life, its crystalline components glowing with inner light. The pattern they sent was simple this time, a repeating mathematical sequence that any intelligent system should recognize. For several long moments, nothing happened. Jack felt sweat beading on his forehead as the representatives began to shift restlessly. Then, the station's lights flickered. The nebula outside pulsed, and the resonator's glow intensified. The monitoring screens filled with data as a response came flooding back, not just a reflection of their signal, but something new. What is happening? Demanded the Marin representative. It's responding, Jack said, trying to keep the excitement from his voice. And it's sending more than we asked for. The incoming signal was massive, far larger than anything they had received before. The resonator struggled to process it, components heating up as data streamed in. Dana's eyes widened as she analyzed the incoming patterns. Jack, this isn't just a response. It's instructions. The holographic display filled with complex patterns, schematics, formulas, configurations unlike anything they had seen before. The nebula isn't just responding to us, Lisa said, her voice filled with wonder. It's telling us how to build something. As the representatives watched in stunned silence, the nebula outside seemed to shift. For a brief moment, the swirling gases parted, revealing a clear path deeper into its depths before closing again. Jack turned to the representatives, unable to hide his triumph. This is what the ancients discovered. The nebula isn't a barrier, it's a gateway. And it's finally showing us how to open it. The Marin representative's compound eyes reflected the resonator's pulsing light. This changes everything, it said softly. But you still haven't proven you can build a functioning array. The challenge remains. We have 6 months left, Jack replied confidently. And now we have the instructions. What none of them realized was that their success had sent ripples beyond their station. In distant sectors, those with interests in keeping the nebula closed had received word of the humans' breakthrough and were already making plans to ensure they would go no further. The construction bay of Outpost Hope bustled with activity. Engineers and technicians moved with purpose as they assembled the full-scale communication array based on the nebula's instructions. Giant crystalline structures caught the light from the nebula, sending rainbow patterns dancing across the walls. In the 2 months since their breakthrough, progress had accelerated beyond anyone's expectations. Jack stood on the observation platform with Lisa, watching as Mike directed the placement of a particularly delicate component. "We're ahead of schedule," Lisa said, checking her data tablet. "Another month, and we'll be ready for the first full test." Jack nodded, but his expression remained serious. "Something feels wrong. The last supply ship was late, and half the components we requested were accidentally shipped to the wrong station." "Bad luck happens," Lisa suggested, 3 times in a row. Jack shook his head. "No, someone doesn't want us to finish this." A loud crash from below interrupted their conversation. One of the main support beams had collapsed, sending technicians scrambling for safety. Alarms blared as emergency systems activated. "Containment breach in Section 4. Dana's voice came over the comm system. "We're losing pressure." Jack and Lisa rushed from the platform, making their way through corridors now filled with flashing emergency lights. They reached the construction bay to find chaos. Equipment damage, the precious crystalline components cracked, and worst of all, Mike trapped under a fallen beam, blood pooling beneath him. "Get the medical team here now," Jack shouted, dropping to his knees beside Mike. "Hold on, buddy. We've got you." Mike's face was pale, his breathing shallow. "The beam. It shouldn't have failed. I checked it myself yesterday." Emergency medical staff arrived, carefully freeing Mike from the debris and rushing him to the medical bay. Jack remained in the construction area, examining the fallen beam with growing anger. "This wasn't an accident," he said to Lisa, pointing to a clean cut in the metal. "Someone sabotaged it." Dan approached, her face grim. "The damage is extensive. We've lost at least 3 weeks of work. And the core crystalline matrix is cracked. We'll need a replacement, which will take another month to fabricate," Lisa added, the implications clear in her voice. With their deadline rapidly approaching, every delay pushed them closer to failure. In the station's secure communication room, Jack faced the screen showing Tom and several Earth Command officials. "We have proof of sabotage," Jack said, sending the evidence they had gathered. The beam was cut with a molecular disruptor, very advanced technology. Tom's expression was grim. "The Orion Consortium has been lobbying hard against your project. They control most of the current communication networks in the quadrant. If you succeed, They lose their monopoly, Jack finished. How's Mike? Tom asked. Stable, but he won't be able to work for at least a month. We've lost our best materials expert when we need him most. One of the command officials leaned forward. We can send replacements for the damaged components, but it will take time. The question is, can you still complete this before the deadline? Jack hesitated, then straightened his shoulders. Yes, we have to, but we need security. If the consortium tries again, we're sending a security team, Tom assured him. And I'm coming back out there myself. This project is too important to fail now. 3 weeks later, the construction bay was back in operation. Security personnel now patrolled the station, checking identification and monitoring all activities. The replacement components had arrived, along with a team of additional engineers from Earth. Jack sat in the medical bay beside Mike's bed. Though still weak, Mike had insisted on reviewing the construction plans from his recovery room. The new matrix isn't aligning properly, Mike said, pointing to a schematic on a tablet. The resonance frequency is off by 0.03%. Jack rubbed his tired eyes. We've tried recalibrating it 6 times. Nothing works. Because you're using standard calibration methods, Mike said. This isn't standard technology. Mike sketched something on the tablet. Try this. We need to think like the nebula thinks, not in straight lines, but in patterns. Jack took the tablet, studying Mike's design. This could work. I'll get the team on it right away. As Jack left the medical bay, an alarm sounded. Not the blaring emergency alarm, but a persistent warning tone that indicated an approaching space phenomenon. Jack rushed to the control room, where Donna and Lisa were already monitoring the situation. Massive solar flare from the nearby star, Donna reported. It's sending a radiation wave straight toward the nebula. And us. Lisa pointed to the sensor readings. The nebula's already reacting. Its energy patterns are shifting. This could disrupt everything we've built. Jack studied the data. How long do we have? The wave will hit us in about 6 hours, Dana said. Station shields should protect us, but the external array components will be fried, Jack finished, unless we can protect them somehow. Tom joined them, having arrived with the security team the previous week. Can we bring the components inside? Jack shook his head. There's not enough time to disassemble everything, and some components are too delicate to move now that they're aligned. Lisa studied the approaching radiation wave. What if we use the nebula itself as a shield? It responds to our resonator. Maybe we can direct its energy to deflect the radiation. That's never been done before, Dana said doubtfully. Nothing we've done here has been done before, Jack replied. Let's try it. 4 hours later, they had modified the resonator to emit a new pattern, one designed to encourage the nebula to form a protective barrier around the station. The theory was sound, but untested. The radiation wave is accelerating, Dana reported. Impact in 90 minutes. The resonator is ready, Lisa said. But someone needs to manually adjust the external arrays to match the new frequency. Jack looked at the external components through the viewport. That means spacewalking during a radiation storm. I'll go, Tom volunteered. No, Jack said firmly. This is my project. I'll do it. Despite protests from the team, Jack donned the radiation suit, a heavy, cumbersome thing that would offer limited protection at best. The suit will give you 30 minutes before radiation levels become dangerous, Lisa said as she helped him with the final preparations. After that, I work fast, Jack said with a forced smile. Outside the station, tethered by a safety line, Jack moved slowly between the array components. The nebula churned around him, its swirling patterns more agitated than usual as the radiation wave approached. The first components adjusted easily, their controls responding to his commands. But as he reached the main array, his comm system crackled with static. Jack, the wave is accelerating. Lisa's voice came through broken and distorted. You have 15 minutes to get back inside. Jack checked the array controls. 3 more adjustments needed, each requiring precise calibration. He worked methodically, ignoring the increasing radiation warnings in his suit. When the final adjustment was complete, Jack turned back toward the airlock. That's when he saw it, a tear in his suit's left arm, exposing his skin to the increasing radiation. "Jack, get inside now." Dana's voice came urgently over the comm. "Radiation levels are spiking." Jack pushed off toward the airlock, his movements growing sluggish as the radiation began to affect him. Through his helmet, he could see the nebula's energy patterns shifting, forming a swirling barrier between the station and the approaching wave. As Jack reached the airlock, the full force of the radiation wave hit. The nebula's protective barrier glowed brilliant purple, absorbing the impact. Inside his failing suit, Jack smiled weakly as darkness closed in. Their crazy theory had worked. The nebula had protected them, but at what cost? The medical bay of Outpost Hope was quiet except for the steady beep of monitoring equipment. Jack lay unconscious, his body fighting the effects of severe radiation exposure. Around his bed stood his team. Lisa with red-rimmed eyes, Dana clutching a data tablet like a shield, and Mike in a hover chair, still recovering from his own injuries. "The doctors say he'll pull through," Tom said, entering the room. "But he'll need specialized treatment back on Earth." "We can't send him back now," Lisa protested. "We only have 3 weeks until the deadline." Tom's expression was grim. "The council representatives are already preparing their final inspection. Without Jack, we continue," Mike said firmly from his chair. "Jack risked everything to save the project. We won't let that go to waste." Dana nodded, pulling up schematics on her tablet. "The nebula's protective response during the radiation wave gave us new data. Look at these energy patterns." The tablet showed complex, flowing patterns unlike anything they had recorded before. The nebula's reaction to the solar flare had revealed aspects of its behavior they hadn't previously understood. "It's like a language," Lisa whispered, studying the patterns. "Not just responses, but a complete communication system." Tom looked doubtful. "Even if that's true, our communication array isn't complete. The final relay stations aren't built, and we don't have time to construct them." "Then we improvise," Mike said. "The nebula responded to our needs during the crisis. Maybe it will do so again if we ask properly." Word of the human project's setbacks had spread throughout nearby systems. Despite attempts to keep the sabotage quiet, rumors circulated. Many dismissed the humans' efforts as doomed, but others watched with growing interest. In the station's communication center, an unexpected message arrived. Dana called the team together to view it. "We've received transmissions from 15 human colonies across 3 sectors," she announced, bringing up the messages on the main screen. "They're all offering help." The messages showed human ships of all sizes, from small personal vessels to large transport craft, volunteering to assist with the project. Some were mining vessels with raw materials, others were research ships with specialized equipment. "They want to serve as mobile relay points," Dana explained. "With enough ships positioned through the nebula, we wouldn't need fixed relay stations." Tom frowned. "That's never been attempted. The ships would need to maintain perfect positions while exposed to the nebula's radiation." "They know the risks," Lisa said, reading through the messages. "They're coming anyway." Over the next 2 weeks, human ships arrived at the edge of the nebula. Each was fitted with components built according to the specifications derived from the nebula's instructions. The station buzzed with activity as engineers and volunteers worked around the clock. In the medical bay, Jack regained consciousness long enough to be briefed on the plan. "It's crazy," he said weakly, a ghost of his old smile appearing. "Exactly the kind of crazy I would have suggested." Mike wheeled his chair closer to Jack's bed. "The nebula's been quieter since you were injured, almost like it's waiting." Jack nodded slowly. "It knows we're trying to communicate. Wake me when it's time for the test." On the day before the council's deadline, the final preparations were complete. 23 human ships had positioned themselves in a complex pattern extending deep into the nebula, each carrying a piece of the communication technology. On the station, the main array hummed with energy, the crystalline components glowing softly. In the control room, tension was palpable. Council representatives had arrived early, gathering to witness what most still believed would be a failure. The Marin representative stood with Ben, the Velen observer, both watching the proceedings with unreadable expressions. Jack had insisted on being present, supported by a medical exoframe that kept him upright. His face was pale, but determination burned in his eyes. "Begin the sequence," he ordered. Dana activated the resonator, which pulsed with light. The patterns they had learned from the nebula flowed from the device, more complex and nuanced than anything they had tried before. On the screens, they watched as the signal reached the first ship. The vessel's smaller resonator captured the signal, amplified it, and sent it deeper into the nebula. Ship after ship repeated the process, creating a chain of communication that pushed further than any previous attempt. Signal holding at 60% strength, Lisa reported, her voice tight with concentration. Approaching the halfway point, the nebula's swirling patterns changed as the signal progressed, energy flows shifting to follow the path created by the ships. The council representatives murmured among themselves, even the skeptics unable to deny what they were seeing. "We're losing coherence at relay point 15, Donna warned. "The pattern is degrading." Jack stepped forward, leaning heavily on his support frame. "Adjust to frequency pattern delta. Let the nebula guide the signal." As the adjustments were made, the signal stabilized, then strengthened. The remaining ships picked it up, continuing the chain. "Final relay point reached," Lisa announced, disbelief in her voice. "Signal strength at 42%. That's enough." The entire room held its breath as they waited to see if anything would come back from the other side of the nebula, a region of space that had been isolated for millennia. Seconds stretched into a minute, then 2. "No response," the Marin representative said finally. While impressive, this demonstration, a sudden burst of energy from the nebula, cut off the Marin's words. The station's systems flared as data began streaming in, not just from the other side of the nebula, but from within it. "We're receiving multiple signals," Dana said, her fingers flying over the controls. "Not just our test signal. There's more. Much more." The main screen filled with data, star charts, navigation coordinates, and messages in dozens of languages, some long forgotten. The nebula itself seemed to come alive, its colors shifting and dancing in patterns too orderly to be natural. "The nebula isn't just letting messages pass through," Jack said, understanding dawning on his face. "It's been storing them. For centuries." The Marin representative stepped forward, compound eyes fixed on the screen. "These messages, some are from species that disappeared thousands of years ago. The ancients built this," Lisa said softly, "not as a barrier, but as an archive, a library of knowledge protected from the outside universe." As they watched, the nebula's patterns formed a clear pathway through its center, a stable corridor that had not existed before. The human ships reported that the radiation levels along this path had dropped to safe levels. "It wasn't that no one could build a communication system," Jack said, turning to face the council representatives. "It was that no one had properly asked permission to enter." The Orion representative, who had been silent until now, stepped forward. "This changes the balance of power across the quadrant. Communication networks, trade routes, access to this ancient knowledge will be shared," Tom said firmly. "That was always our intention." Ben, the Velen observer, approached Jack. "My species has studied the nebula for centuries, yet we never thought to simply listen to it. Humans have achieved something truly remarkable here." Outside the viewport, the nebula glowed with new light, its swirling gases forming patterns that seemed almost joyful. The silence that had filled this region of space for millennia had been broken at last. Jack smiled weakly, exhaustion catching up with him. We just did what humans always do when told something's impossible. And what is that? Asked the Marin representative. We try anyway, Jack replied. Because the most important discoveries come when you refuse to accept limitations. As medical staff helped Jack back to the medical bay, the nebula pulsed one final time, sending a clear message through their system. Dana translated it, her voice filled with wonder. Welcome, friends. We have been waiting a long time. The silence was truly ruined now, replaced by the voices of the past and the promise of a future where the impossible was simply another challenge for human ingenuity to overcome. Captain Tom Reed squinted at the radar display. Something large drifted among the asteroids ahead. His small ship, the Horizon's Edge, had been mapping this remote sector for weeks with nothing interesting to report. Until now. What do you make of it, West? Reed asked his science officer. Alan West adjusted his glasses and leaned closer to his screen. Unknown object, sir. About 200 meters long. Metal construction. No energy readings. He looked up with excitement in his eyes. It's artificial, Captain, and it doesn't match any known designs. Reed nodded and turned to his pilot. Take us closer, Jones. Nice and slow. As the Horizon's Edge moved deeper into the asteroid field, they got their first visual of the object. The crew fell silent as the image appeared on the main screen. It was a ship, but unlike any they had seen before. Where modern vessels were sharp and angular with obvious weapon mounts, this craft was smooth and rounded. Its hull was made of a dull, gray metal with no visible seams. No thrusters, no weapons, no windows. Just a perfect oval shape that somehow seemed both primitive and advanced at the same time. How old do you think it is? Reed asked. West shook his head in wonder. The dust layer suggests thousands of years, at least. But the hull shows no damage, no micrometeorite impacts, nothing. Jane Miller, the ship's engineer, spoke up from her station. That's impossible. Nothing sits in an asteroid field that long without taking hits. And yet there it is, Reed said. He made his decision quickly. Suit up. We're going to take a look. An hour later, Reed, West, and Miller floated outside the ancient vessel in their spacesuits. Up close, the ship was even more mysterious. The hull had a faint pattern etched into it, like circuits or writing, barely visible under the dust of ages. No obvious entry point, Miller said, running her gloved hand along the smooth surface. As if responding to her touch, a seam appeared in the hull, widening into a doorway. Light spilled out from inside. It's still powered, West gasped. After all this time. Reed checked his suit readings. Atmosphere inside. Gravity too. He clicked his comm. Jones, keep the Horizon's Edge at safe distance. If you don't hear from us in 3 hours, leave and report to Fleet Command. Understood, Captain, came the reply. Be careful in there. Reed led the way into the ship. The interior was as smooth and curved as the outside. The walls glowed with a soft blue light that seemed to come from the material itself. The air was cool and dry. It's clean, Miller said in disbelief. No dust, like it's been waiting for someone. They moved deeper into the ship, finding curved corridors that led to a central chamber. As they entered, lights brightened, and a console rose from the floor in the center of the room. West approached it carefully. Some kind of control center. When his hand hovered over the console, a holographic display appeared above it. Strange symbols flowed across the light display. A language, West said, his voice filled with excitement. Nothing like I've ever seen before. The symbols shifted and changed as they watched. West pulled out his tablet and began recording. It's learning, he said. I think it's trying to communicate. Miller had moved to what appeared to be an engineering section. Captain, you need to see this. Reed joined her at a wall panel that had opened to reveal complex machinery. Miller's scanner hovered over it. These aren't engines, at least not like anything we use, she said. The technology is. I don't even have words for it. It's like they understood physics in a completely different way. Reed nodded and tapped his comm. Jones, send a message to Fleet Command. We found an intact alien vessel of unknown origin. Technology far beyond current understanding. Request instructions. The reply came quickly. Message sent, Captain. Standing by. Reed turned his attention back to West, who was now interacting with the holographic display. The symbols had changed again, now organizing into patterns. I think I'm getting somewhere, West said. This interface is adaptive. It's learning from my inputs. He pointed to a repeated symbol. This appears over and over. I think it might be a name. For the ship? Reed asked. West nodded. If I'm right, this vessel is called the Guardian. As if responding to its name, the ship hummed to life around them. More panels opened in the walls, and the holographic display expanded. Captain, Miller called out, her voice tight with excitement. The ship's systems are activating. The hologram shifted again, now showing a star map. A point of light pulsed at its center. That's our location, West said. He pointed to another light. And I think that's Earth. Reed's comm crackled. Captain, receiving response from Fleet Command. Put it through, Reed ordered. Admiral Green's voice filled their helmets. Captain Reed, you are to secure the alien vessel and prepare it for towing. The Dauntless is being dispatched to your location to bring it back to Earth for study. Maintain minimum contact with unknown systems. Understood, sir, Reed replied. But there's something you should know. The ship appears to be operational. Its systems are active. There was a pause before the Admiral responded. Is there any indication of weapons capabilities? Reed looked around at the smooth, curved walls and peaceful blue light. Negative, sir. It doesn't appear to be a warship. Then it's of limited tactical value, the Admiral said, his voice flat. Still, the Science Division will want to study it. Secure it and wait for the Dauntless. The communication ended, and Reed exchanged glances with his team. Limited tactical value, Miller said incredulously. They have no idea what's here. West was still working with the hologram. Captain, I think I've found something. A record or log of some kind. The display showed images of beings unlike any they had seen before. Tall, slender creatures with 4 arms and elongated heads. The Builders, West whispered. More images appeared. Planets, stars, and finally, what looked like a terrible war. Worlds burning. Fleets of angular ships that somehow reminded Reed of the Drek Empire vessels. What happened to them? Reed wondered aloud. The final image showed the smooth oval ship, the Guardian, floating away from a dying world. I think they're gone, West said softly. And they left this ship behind. Unknown to the humans, a small craft washed from the shadow of a distant asteroid. Inside, a Drek scout observed the human discovery with interest. It sent a tight beam transmission to its command ship. Humans have found Forerunner technology. Appears inactive. Not a threat. The reply came swiftly. Continue observation. Do not interfere. Back aboard the Guardian, Reed made his decision. We'll wait for the Dauntless as ordered. But until then, learn everything you can. He looked around at the ancient ship that had survived for thousands of years. Something tells me this discovery is more important than anyone realizes. 3 weeks later, the Guardian floated in Earth's largest orbital shipyard. A team of scientists and military officials moved around it like ants, scanning and probing its hull. Captain Reed stood beside Engineer Miller, watching as Admiral Grant, head of fleet operations, examined the ancient ship with obvious disappointment. This is what had you so excited, Reed? Admiral Grant asked. The tall man ran his hand over the dull metal surface. It looks like something from a museum. With respect, sir, Reed said, appearances can be misleading. The technology inside is unlike anything we've ever seen. Admiral Grant shook his head. Our best engineers have been over it for weeks. No weapons systems, no faster-than-light drive, just some fancy lights and strange metals. He turned to face Reed directly. "The Drek Empire is pushing at our borders every day. I need warships, not relics." Miller stepped forward. "Sir, if I may." "You may not, engineer," the admiral cut her off. "The decision has been made. The ship will be moved to the research division for study, and your team will be reassigned." He checked his watch. "Report to my office tomorrow morning for your new orders." Dismissed. As the admiral walked away, Miller turned to Reed with frustrated eyes. "They're not even trying to understand it." "I know," Reed said quietly. "West has barely scratched the surface of the ship's database. There's so much more to learn." Miller looked back at the Guardian. "Those energy readings I found, they don't match anything in our physics models. This ship could revolutionize our understanding of." An alarm blared throughout the station, cutting her off. Red emergency lights flashed as an announcement echoed. "All personnel to alert stations. This is not a drill." "Repeat, all personnel to alert stations." Reed grabbed the arm of a passing officer. "What's happening?" "The colony on Nexus Prime is under attack," the officer said, his face pale. "It's the Drek. They've developed something new, something big." The situation room was packed with grim-faced officers. On the main screen, grainy footage showed a massive Drek ship unlike any they had seen before. It was angular and black, bristling with weapons. As they watched, it fired a beam of energy that cut through a human defense station like paper. Admiral Grant stood at the front of the room, his face hard as stone. "This footage came from Nexus Prime 3 hours ago. We've had no contact since. We must assume the colony is lost." "How many people?" someone asked. 20,000, Grant replied. "And Nexus Prime is just the beginning. 2 hours ago, we lost contact with Harmony Station. An hour after that, the mining outpost on Vega 3 went dark." Reed felt sick. 3 human settlements wiped out in a single day. "What is that ship?" another officer asked. "Intelligence calls it the Iron Tempest," Grant said. "A new class of Drek destroyer with planet-killing capabilities. Our standard defenses are useless against it." The room erupted in questions and suggestions. Grant silenced them with a raised hand. "We're implementing Emergency Protocol Alpha. All civilian ships are being recalled to Earth and the core worlds. Military vessels are being deployed in defensive formations." His eyes moved across the room. "I won't lie to you. We have nothing that can match the Iron Tempest's firepower. We need time to develop countermeasures." Reed felt a tap on his shoulder. West had slipped into the back of the room, his tablet clutched tightly in his hands. "Captain," West whispered, "I found something. About the Guardian." "This isn't the time," Reed started, but West shook his head urgently. "It's exactly the time. I've been translating more of the ship's database. The Forerunners who built it faced extinction too, at the hands of a race using technology remarkably similar to the Drek." Reed's attention snapped fully to West. "Are you certain?" West nodded and showed Reed his tablet. "The weapons' signatures are almost identical. And there's more." "Captain Reed." Admiral Grant's voice cut through their whispered conversation. "Since you're already discussing strategy, perhaps you'd like to share with the room." All eyes turned to Reed. He hesitated, then stepped forward. "Sir, the ancient ship we discovered might be relevant to our situation." Grant's expression darkened. "The museum piece. How exactly would that help us against the most advanced Drek weapon ever created?" "The ship's database contains information about a similar weapon used thousands of years ago," Reed explained. "The Guardian might have been designed specifically to counter such threats." A moment of silence followed before laughter erupted from several officers. Grant didn't join in, but his expression made his thoughts clear. "Captain Reed," he said, "I appreciate creative thinking, but this is not the time for archaeological theories. We need practical solutions, not ancient history lessons." He turned back to the room at large. "Now, as I was saying." Reed returned to West and Miller, who had also slipped into the meeting. "He didn't even listen," Miller whispered angrily. Would you? Reed asked. An untested theory about an ancient ship against a proven planet killer. West clutched his tablet tighter. But I found references to defensive systems unlike anything we've conceived. The Guardian wasn't a warship. It was a peacekeeping vessel specifically designed to neutralize weapons of mass destruction. Reed looked between his two officers, then made a decision. Meet me at Docking Bay 12 at midnight. Tell no one. The shipyard was dimly lit during night cycle. Reed, West, and Miller moved quietly through the shadows toward where the Guardian was docked. The security was minimal. No one sought any value in the ancient ship worth guarding. This is court-martial territory, Miller whispered as they approached. Only if we're caught, Reed replied, and only if we're wrong. They slipped aboard the Guardian through the same entrance that had opened for them in the asteroid field. Inside, the ship glowed with its soft blue light, seemingly welcoming them back. West moved immediately to the central console. I've been working on a more direct interface, he said, connecting his tablet to the holographic display. The symbols appeared, flowing faster now, as if the ship recognized him. Can you access the defensive systems? Reed asked. West nodded. I think so, but there's something odd about how they're described. Not like weapons or shields as we understand them. Miller moved to the engineering section. I've been thinking about those energy readings. They almost seem like... She stopped, her eyes widening as a panel slid open. Captain, I think I found something. Reed joined her, staring at what looked like a control chair that hadn't been there during their first visit. The ship is adapting, Miller said, changing itself based on our interaction with it. Or revealing itself, West suggested. Look at this. The hologram now showed a series of images. Planets being attacked, then the Guardian moving between the attacker and victim. A wave of energy spreading from the ancient ship, neutralizing the attack. It was designed as a shield, Reed said softly. Not to fight, but to protect. Miller approached the chair. I think this is how they controlled it. She hesitated, then sat down. The chair adjusted to her form, and new lights appeared along its arms. Jane, wait. Reed started, but it was too late. Miller gasped as the chair lit up beneath her. Blue light raced along her arms and her eyes widened. I can feel it, she whispered, in my mind. There's someone else here. Jane? Reed moved toward her, concerned. Miller's eyes focused again, a look of wonder spreading across her face. Not someone. Something. The ship has an eye. It calls itself Guide. She looked directly at Reed. And it says it's been waiting for us. At that moment, alarms blared throughout the shipyard. The emergency channel on Reed's comm crackled to life. All personnel, battle stations. Direct forces have entered the Sol system. The Iron Tempest has been detected on approach to Earth. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Chaos erupted throughout Earth's orbital shipyard. Officers ran to their posts as emergency lights flashed. Outside the viewports, Earth's defense fleet was already moving into formation. Inside the Guardian, Miller sat frozen in the control chair, her eyes unfocused. Jane. Reed shook her shoulder. We need to go. Miller blinked and looked at Reed, but her voice sounded strange, as if two people were speaking at once. There is no time. The weapon approaches. West moved closer. Jane, are you all right? I am both Jane Miller and Guide, she replied. A temporary link has formed between us. It is how the Guardian was designed to be operated. Reed studied her face, looking for signs of distress. Can you break the connection if you want to? Miller nodded. Yes, but right now, we need it. She turned to the holographic display, which now showed the approaching Drek fleet. At its center was the massive Iron Tempest. Earth's defenses will fail, Miller said, her voice grim. The weapon they face was designed using principles similar to those that nearly destroyed the Forerunners. Can this ship help? Reed asked. The Guardian was created for exactly this purpose, Miller replied. to stand between life and extinction. Reed's comm unit buzzed. Admiral Grant's voice came through, tense and rushed. All ships prepare for emergency deployment. Civilian evacuation is underway. This is not a drill. Reed looked at his two friends, then made his decision. How do we launch this ship? Miller placed her hands on the arms of the control chair. The Guardian is ready. It has been ready for thousands of years. The ship's blue lights pulsed brighter. Throughout the vessel, systems that had been dormant for millennia came to life. We'll need clearance to leave the dock, West said. Reed shook his head. In this chaos, no one will notice one more ship heading out. He clicked his comm. Jones, this is Captain Reed. Meet us at Docking Bay 12 now. Don't tell anyone. 10 minutes later, Pilot Jones rushed aboard, his face pale. Captain, what's happening? The whole fleet is mobilizing. We're taking this ship out, Reed told him. I need you at the helm. Jones stared around at the alien interior. Sir, I don't even know how to fly this thing. Neither do we, Reed admitted. But Miller has a connection to the ship's eye. It knows what to do. From the control chair, Miller spoke. Guide will assist with navigation. The pilot need only provide direction. Jones looked uncertain, but moved to a console that lit up as he approached. A simplified control interface appeared. Captain, West called from another station. I've accessed the external cameras. You need to see this. On the holographic display, they could see the shipyard in pandemonium. Ships were launching in all directions. Beyond them, the first flashes of battle lit up the darkness of space. Earth's defense fleet was engaging the outer ships of the Drek Armada. We need to go now, Reed said. Jones, get us out of here. Jones placed his hands on the controls. The Guardian hummed to life, its engines activating with barely a vibration. Smoothly, the ancient ship slid out of its dock and into space. As they cleared the shipyard, Miller gasped. The ship is changing. It was true. The dull metal of the Guardian's hull was beginning to glow. The faint patterns they had noticed before were now shining with blue light. The ship's rounded form seemed to shift slightly, becoming more streamlined. It's adapting, West said in wonder. Preparing for its purpose. On the display, they could see the battle unfolding. Earth's ships were fighting bravely, but the Drek forces were overwhelming. And still, the Iron Tempest hadn't engaged. It hung back, protected by its escort fleet, waiting for the moment to unleash its planet-killer weapon. Reed's comm crackled. Unidentified vessel, this is Fleet Command. You are not authorized for departure. Return to dock immediately. Reed hesitated, then responded. Fleet Command, this is Captain Tom Reed aboard the Guardian. We are moving to intercept the Iron Tempest. There was a pause before Admiral Grant's voice came through. Reed, have you lost your mind? Return to dock now. That's an order. I'm sorry, sir, Reed replied. But this ship may be Earth's only hope. That ancient relic. Grant's voice was incredulous. Reed, you're throwing away your lives for nothing. Reed turned off his comm. Jones, take us straight for the Iron Tempest. The pilot swallowed hard but nodded. Aye, Captain. The Guardian accelerated, moving faster than Reed had thought possible. They passed by Earth's struggling defenders, drawing curious looks from both sides of the battle. No one's firing at us, West noticed. They don't see us as a threat. Or a target, Reed added. Miller spoke from the control chair, her voice now more guide than Jane. The Guardian was not designed to be noticed until the moment of necessity. Its purpose is to protect, not to intimidate. As they drew closer to the heart of the Drek fleet, Jones looked back at Reed. Sir, what exactly is our plan? Reed looked to Miller. Guide, what is the Guardian capable of? Miller closed her eyes. When she opened them, they glowed slightly blue. The Guardian does not destroy. It neutralizes. It was built using principles that the Forerunners discovered only as their civilization was ending. the conversion of destructive energy into harmless forms. What does that mean in practical terms? West asked. It means, Miller said, that the Guardian can stop the Iron Tempest's weapon. But to do so, it must be directly in its path. Reeve understood. We need to get between the Iron Tempest and Earth. Yes, Miller confirmed. When the weapon fires, the Guardian will activate its true purpose. Jones set course through the chaotic battle. Ships exploded around them, but the Guardian moved with impossible grace, avoiding debris and energy blasts. As they approached the center of the Drek Formation, the Guardian's transformation became more pronounced. The blue patterns on its hull now formed complex, flowing designs. The ship itself seemed to be growing larger, its form expanding. We're being scanned, West reported. The Drek have noticed us. On their display, they could see the Iron Tempest turning toward them. The massive black ship dwarfed the Guardian, its weapons ports opening like hungry mouths. They're targeting us, West said, his voice tight. Reed moved beside Miller's chair. Is the Guardian ready? Miller nodded, her eyes still glowing blue. It has waited thousands of years for this moment. To fulfill its purpose, the Iron Tempest fired. A beam of terrible energy lanced out, heading straight for the Guardian. Reed and the others braced themselves, but Miller remained calm in the control chair. Now, she whispered, awaken. The Guardian erupted with light. The beam from the Iron Tempest struck it and disappeared. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the Guardian began to change. Its form expanded further, the blue patterns growing brighter, until they outshone the stars. From the control chair, Miller spoke with the voice of guide. The ancient ship, feared by none, shall stand against the storm of iron. The Guardian's true awakening had begun. General Cragg stood on the command deck of the Iron Tempest, his gray-scaled skin gleaming under the harsh lights. The massive Drek commander watched with cold yellow eyes as the strange small ship approached. What is that? He demanded. The weapons officer looked up from his console. Unknown vessel, General. Old design. No match for the Iron Tempest. Cragg grunted. Humans are desperate if they're sending antiques against us. He studied the odd blue glow surrounding the small ship. Still, something about it seems unusual. Scan it again. The science officer worked his station. Sir, energy readings are confusing. The ship appears to be changing somehow. Changing? Cragg moved closer to the main view screen. Explain. I cannot, sir. It's unlike anything in our database. Cragg snorted. It doesn't matter. Nothing can stand against the Iron Tempest. Prepare the main weapon. Target that ship, then Earth. Yes, General. Aboard the Guardian, Reed and his crew watched in awe as the ancient ship transformed around them. The walls had become transparent, giving them a perfect view of space in all directions. The blue patterns now flowed like rivers of light across the ship's expanding form. What's happening to us? Jones asked, his hands hovering uncertainly over his controls. Miller spoke from the control chair, her voice eerily calm. The Guardian is entering its defensive configuration. For thousands of years, it has waited in dormant form. Now it awakens fully. On their view screen, they could see the Iron Tempest growing larger. The massive Drek flagship was easily 20 times the size of the Guardian, even in its expanded state. They're charging weapons, West reported, reading the alien displays that now floated around him. Energy levels rising. Reed moved to Miller's side. Jane, are you still with us? Miller turned to look at him. Her eyes glowed blue, but he could still see his engineer behind them. I am here, Captain. Guide and I are working together now. The connection is beautiful. She reached out and touched his hand. Don't worry. The Guardian knows what to do. Sir, West called, the Iron Tempest has locked weapons on us. Reed straightened his shoulders. Everyone brace for impact. This is what we came for. The Iron Tempest fired again. A beam of destructive energy, bright enough to blind, shot directly at the Guardian. But instead of destroying them, something miraculous happened. As the beam struck the Guardian, it seemed to bend around the ancient ship. Rivers of energy flowed along those blue patterns, swirling and dancing across the hull. "The Guardian is absorbing the attack," Miller explained, her voice filled with wonder. "Converting its energy." On the view screen, they could see confusion on the Drek flagship. The Iron Tempest fired again, a longer, more powerful blast. Again, the Guardian absorbed it, the blue patterns glowing brighter. "It's working," West exclaimed. Reed wasn't so sure. "They'll just keep firing until they overwhelm us." Miller shook her head. "No. The Guardian was designed to handle weapons far more powerful than this. Each attack only makes it stronger." On the Iron Tempest, General Cragg slammed his fist against the armrest of his command chair. "Impossible," he roared. "Nothing can resist the planet killer." "Sir, our weapon is having no effect," the weapons officer reported. "The energy is being absorbed somehow." Cragg rose to his full height, towering over his officers. "Increase power to maximum. I want that ship destroyed." "But sir, we've never fired at full power. The system might." "Do it," Cragg interrupted. "Now." Aboard the Guardian, the crew watched as the Iron Tempest's weapon ports began to glow with blinding intensity. "They're increasing power," West warned. "Beyond safe levels, judging by those readings." Miller nodded. "They are desperate. This is good. The Guardian can use their own energy against them." "How?" Reed asked. "Watch," Miller said simply. The Iron Tempest fired. This time, the beam was twice as powerful as before, bright enough to outshine the sun. It struck the Guardian head-on. For a moment, Reed thought they had miscalculated. The Guardian shuddered. The blue patterns flared almost white. Miller gasped in the control chair, her back arching. "Jane." Reed moved to help her, but she held up a hand. "It's all right," she said through gritted teeth. "This is part of the process." The Guardian's form expanded further, the blue light spreading outward like wings. Then, with a pulse that rippled through space itself, the Guardian released the energy it had absorbed. But it didn't fire back at the Iron Tempest. Instead, a wave of blue light spread in all directions, washing over the Drek flagship and its escort ships. Where the wave touched, weapon systems went dark. Engines failed. The Iron Tempest hung in space, suddenly powerless. "What did we just do?" Jones asked in amazement. Miller smiled, the glow in her eyes dimming slightly. "The Guardian doesn't destroy. It neutralizes. It converts offensive energy into a dampening field that disables weapon systems. We've stopped them," Reed said, hardly believing it. West studied his displays. "Not all systems are down. They still have life support, communications, some engines, just no weapons." General Cragg stared in disbelief as his mighty flagship went dark around him. Emergency lights came on, casting red shadows across the command deck. "What happened?" he demanded. "Status report. All weapons offline," the weapons officer reported, his voice shaking. "Engines at minimal power. Shields down." "Impossible," Cragg roared. He turned to the communications officer. "Order all escort ships to destroy that vessel." The officer worked his console frantically. "Sir, no response from the escort ships. It appears they've been affected as well." Cragg's yellow eyes narrowed. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "If we cannot destroy Earth with our weapons, we will destroy it another way." He turned to the navigation officer. "Set course directly for Earth. Full ramming speed." The officer hesitated. "Sir?" "Do it," Cragg shouted. "If we are to fall, we will take their world with us." The Iron Tempest's remaining engines fired up. The massive ship began to move, slowly at first, then gathering speed, heading straight for Earth. "They're on the move," West reported, "and they're heading directly for Earth." Reed understood immediately. They're going to ram the planet. A ship that size hitting at speed. would cause an extinction-level event. Miller finished for him. Her eyes glowed brighter as she communicated with Guide. The Guardian anticipated this. It has one final defense. The ancient ship moved again, positioning itself directly in the Iron Tempest's path. The blue patterns shifted, forming new configurations. What is it doing now? Reed asked. Converting kinetic energy, Miller replied. The same principles that allow it to absorb weapon fire can be used against physical momentum. On the view screen, they could see the Iron Tempest growing larger by the second, bearing down on them like a mountain of metal. Will it work on something that size? West asked, unable to hide the fear in his voice. Miller didn't answer immediately. When she spoke, it was with both her voice and Guide's. We are about to find out. The Iron Tempest filled their view, moments from collision. Reed held his breath. Then, at the last possible instant, the Guardian blazed with light so bright that the crew had to shield their eyes. When they could see again, a miraculous sight greeted them. The Iron Tempest had stopped. It hung in space, barely 100 meters from the Guardian, completely motionless. Around both ships, space itself seemed to ripple with colored light, like the most beautiful aurora ever seen. It worked, Miller whispered. The Guardian converted all their kinetic energy into harmless light. The Iron Tempest, the mighty planet killer, the terror of human space, hung defeated before them. The ancient ship that no one had feared had accomplished the impossible. Earth was saved. 1 month after the battle, Captain Tom Reed stood at attention in the Grand Hall of Earth's Central Command. Beside him stood Engineer Jane Miller and Science Officer Alan West. They wore their dress uniforms, freshly pressed for the occasion. Admiral Grant approached the podium, his face solemn. The room fell silent. Captain Tom Reed, Engineer Jane Miller, and Science Officer Alan West, the Admiral began formally. You stand before this council, accused of disobeying direct orders, unauthorized use of military property, and reckless endangerment. Reed kept his eyes forward, his expression neutral. They had expected this. These are serious charges, Admiral Grant continued. In ordinary times, they would result in court-martial and dishonorable discharge. He paused, looking at each of them in turn. However, these are not ordinary times. A small smile broke through the Admiral's stern facade. Your actions, while against regulations, saved Earth and possibly all of humanity. Therefore, this council has decided to dismiss all charges. The room erupted in applause. Grant raised his hand for silence. Furthermore, it is my honor to present each of you with the Star of Valor, our highest military decoration. He stepped forward, pinning the medals to their uniforms one by one. When he reached Reed, he spoke quietly. I was wrong about that ship, Captain. We all were. Reed nodded. Thank you, sir. After the ceremony, Reed, Miller, and West stood on an observation deck overlooking the shipyard. Below them, the Guardian floated serenely, its blue patterns glowing softly. Around it swarmed research vessels and science teams, all studying the ancient ship that had saved Earth. What will happen to it now? West asked. The science division wants to take it apart, study its technology, Reed said. Miller shook her head. They can't. The Guardian won't allow it. Since the battle, Miller's connection with Guide had weakened, but not disappeared entirely. Occasionally, her eyes still flickered with blue light when she spoke of the ship. What do you mean it won't allow it? Reed asked. The Guardian has a purpose, Miller explained. Protecting life. That purpose isn't finished just because the Iron Tempest is defeated. West nodded thoughtfully. I've been studying the data we gathered during the battle. The technology is beyond anything we could have imagined. The forerunners who built it had a completely different understanding of energy and matter. Not different, Miller corrected, just more advanced. They learned too late that destruction leads only to more destruction. The Guardian was their final gift to the future, a way to break the cycle. A young officer approached them. Captain Reed. The Council requests your presence. The Drek ambassador has arrived for negotiations. The meeting room was tense. On one side sat Earth's military leaders and politicians. On the other sat a delegation of Drek, including General Crag himself. The massive alien commander looked diminished somehow, his proud bearing replaced with grudging respect. Reed, Miller, and West were seated near Admiral Grant. Before them on the table lay the terms of surrender. A human diplomat was speaking. "The terms are generous, General Crag. Your ships will be allowed to return to Drek space unharmed. In exchange, the Drek Empire will withdraw from all human colonies and establish a demilitarized zone between our territories." Crag's yellow eyes narrowed. "And what guarantees do we have that you won't use your new weapon against us once we are vulnerable?" "The Guardian is not a weapon," Miller said before anyone could stop her. All eyes turned to her. "Then what is it?" Crag demanded. Miller's eyes flickered blue for a moment. "It is a protector. A shield, not a sword. It was built by the Forerunners, the same race your ancestors nearly destroyed thousands of years ago." Crag's scaled skin paled. "That is ancient history. A myth." "No." West joined in, activating a holographic display. "It's fact. We've translated enough of the Guardian's database to confirm it. Your people's weapons technology is based on corrupted Forerunner science. You understood the principles of destruction, but not the balance the Forerunners eventually discovered." The hologram showed images of an ancient war. Tall, elegant beings facing extinction at the hands of ancestors of the Drek. Then, the creation of the Guardian and its departure from a dying world. "The Forerunners could have built a weapon to destroy your ancestors," Reed explained. "Instead, they built the Guardian to protect future civilizations. They chose peace as their final act." The room was silent as the implications sank in. Finally, Crag spoke, his voice unusually quiet. "We have always believed that strength comes from power over others, from the ability to destroy." He looked at the images of the Forerunners. "Perhaps we were wrong." 3 months later, Reed stood on the bridge of his new ship, the Peacekeeper. Through the view screen, he could see the Guardian floating nearby, its blue patterns pulsing gently. Miller stood beside him, now officially the liaison to Guide and the Guardian. "Are you sure about this?" Reed asked her. Miller nodded. "The Guardian has made its decision. It won't be a weapon for humanity alone. It will serve its original purpose, protecting all sentient life from extinction-level threats. And Guide wants you to go with it." "Not just me," Miller smiled. "Us. You, me, West, Jones. The Guardian has chosen us as its crew. Guide says we proved ourselves worthy when we risked everything to save others." Reed looked around at his bridge, at the faces of his crew. "Where will we go?" "Everywhere," Miller replied, her eyes glowing blue. "The Guardian's database contains star maps of thousands of worlds. Some may still have life. Some may be facing threats similar to what we faced. Guide believes this is what the Forerunners intended, for the Guardian to travel where needed, protecting life in all its forms." Reed considered this for a long moment. "Not exactly what I expected when we found an old ship in an asteroid field." Miller laughed. "The ancient ship no one feared, until it stopped the unstoppable." On the view screen, the Guardian's patterns brightened, as if in agreement. Around them, a diplomatic fleet assembled. Ships from Earth, from the Drek Empire, and from other races who had heard of the Guardian's power and came seeking knowledge rather than conquest. "Ready to make history, Captain?" West asked, joining them on the bridge. Reed smiled and gave the order he never thought he'd give. "Take us out, Mr. Jones. The Guardian will lead the way." As the Peacekeeper moved into formation beside the Guardian, the ancient ship's patterns flared brilliantly. Then, with a pulse of blue light that rippled across space itself, both ships vanished into the depths of the universe, carrying with them the Forerunner's final message, that true strength lies not in destruction, but in protection. The Guardian, the ancient ship that no one had feared, had found its new purpose and its new crew. Together, they would continue the mission that had begun thousands of years ago, standing between life and extinction, wherever they were needed most. And somewhere, in whatever realm the Forerunners now existed, they watched and were pleased. Their final gift to the universe had found worthy guardians at last.